For the well-off, this could be the best tax day since the early 1930s. How to pay no taxes is the cover story of the latest issue of Bloomberg Business Week. It includes 11 shelters, dodges, and rolls, all legal and all used by America's wealthy. Bloomberg News reporter Jesse Drucker wrote the article. He's been with Bloomberg since 2009 and last month won 2 awards for a series of stories on how multinationals like Google use offshore tax havens to cut their tax bills. He joins me now on set. Jesse, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
This is fascinating stuff. And when the part that really got me, we were talking during the break, was when Warren Buffett conceded that the people who clean his office are taxed at a higher rate than he is because of dividends. How is this possible?
Well, I mean, I think people are relatively aware of the fact that dividends and capital gains get taxed at a much more favorable rate than ordinary income. And so the result is that you have people really, kind of at the upper stratosphere paying taxes at an effective rate of sometime in the mid-teens, whereas, there are plenty of average Americans who are paying income taxes at effective rates, in the 20s or even high 20s or low 30s. But, kind of what this article is supposed to illustrate is kind of going beyond the statutory rate and the favorable things that benefit people like Warren Buffett and get into some of the strategies that people use to cut their effective tax rates, in some cases all the way to zero.
And what are those strategies? Because there were a couple of names that I was aware of and a couple of names that I had never heard of. For instance?
Well, I mean, one strategy, kind of to use the technical term, there's something called a variable prepaid forward contract, which to kind of use
the you kind of spun my head around a little bit.
Well, to put it in layman's terms, it's basically a way to cash out appreciated stock, but not do it in a way that the IRS recognizes as a taxable sale, and so it won't trigger capital gains tax.
When you say that the IRS doesn't recognize, we're still talking something that's legal, but if they don't recognize, is obfuscation, is that the key here?
Well, yeah, the whole idea is you want to have something that gives you the benefit of cash or economic income but isn't recognized as taxable income by the tax code. So, for instance, one of those transactions is basically a way where an investment bank will lend you cash using your shares as collateral, and you enter into some puts and calls to eliminate your downside. And so kind of for all the world, it has the economics of a cash sale, except you don't lose 15% of it to a capital gains tax.
And it's interesting. One of the other things I saw was there's some wealthy folks who basically don't use their own income, but they access lines of credit.
Sure, yeah. I mean, basically, many of these strategies, whether it's cashing out stock or trying to sell appreciated real estate, are essentially kind of sophisticated borrowings. In many cases where they never actually pay the loan back, where someone else is on the hook for the loan. For instance, one of the strategies was a way to cash in appreciated real estate where you enter into a partnership with the person that wants to buy it. You're technically on the hook for repaying the loan, but in reality, they're the one repaying it, and so you walk away with the cash, but you don't have to pay capital gains tax.
What is the upshot of this as relates to reforming the tax code?
Well, that's a very good question. I mean, the reality is there's a lot of talk about kind of cutting budgets and cutting services. There is not a huge amount of talk about fundamental tax reform. And to the degree that there isn't much around sort of complicated strategies like this. It's usually around changing statutory rates, not sort of the kind of real world of here's how very wealthy people avoid paying taxes.
And for folks who are not in that 1%? Are they just out of luck?
I mean, I think for the most part, these are strategies that are used by very wealthy individuals.
All right, Jesse Drucker joining us, Bloomberg Business Week. It's a fascinating story. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.